is how we refer to it in LoadTrek speak, or the area of the software in which we create and modify our static loads. What you see here on this screen is the static load plane, and if we take a look here inside the static loads, there's 3 main windows, and there's a 4th smaller window that I'm going to drag around here. It pop up in various locations on your screen when you first come into the static load plane. I like to move mine down and to the right so that it doesn't cover anything that I need to look at. You can also hide this, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. A simple review of the layout is there's 3 main windows to the static load plane, similar to the load plane, very similar to the load plane, or most other planes in LoadTrek where there's 3 main windows. The window on the left is always, as normal, referred to as the jobs tree. It's a list of all the loads or jobs that are in my database that meet the criteria that I'm looking at, and we'll talk about that in a moment. In the center is the buttons area, or this small, thin, narrow window here with all these buttons. And then over on the right is the static load edit form, very similar to the load edit form, except now we're dealing with static loads, and we're going to get a nice definition of static loads in a second. And this 4th kind of floating window that we see here is sometimes referred to as the frequency window. Its official title is the static load schedule, but it's more often commonly referred to as the frequency or the static load frequency window. It's always going to be the uppermost window. It's going to open on top of these other 3 smaller windows behind it. You can hide it by using this button in the center here that says hide frequency. If I left click on it, it goes away, and then the button changes to the words show frequency or show FREQ. And if I left click, it'll toggle it right back where it was, where I left it when I dragged it over to the lower right hand side. So if that's annoying, or if you move to a different plane, sometimes this frequency will still be displayed. You can go back into your static load plane and hide your frequency before you exit out of it, or you can simply close the plane and get out of the static load plane. That will close these 3 windows as well as the static load schedule, that small square window in the lower right. So feel free to do that when you can, if you need to, if it gets annoying to see that small window there. So let's do a quick definition of what LoadTrek refers to as a static load. So we're in the plane called the static load plane. We see the static load edit form over here on the right, static load schedule or frequency down below. And a static load is simply a load that is going to be built in the system and scheduled to run on more than one day of the week, or a series of days of the week, as well as some special days or holidays. So if you have a scenario in your database or in your work environment where you haul a certain freight load for this customer, and you haul maybe multiple loads for this customer in any given week, and you haul them on the same days of the week, perhaps a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or the first 3 days of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you can build what we call a static load in your database and schedule it to run every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at a certain time. And then that will post, and then we use the term post, meaning it will show up in that day's dispatch and be available to assign to a driver on that day. And so what we build in the static load plane are these static loads. We schedule them to run on set days of the week and set special days or holidays. And then on those days of the week, when we're back in our load plane or our route plane, they are available to us and are able to be assigned to a driver on that specific date. And so in the static load plane, you say it runs every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You don't assign it a very specific date because that date itself is going to change. Today is the 20th. Next Monday is the 27th. It's going to run both of those days. And so when we're in the load plane or the route plane for the 20th or the 27th, that static load will appear on that day and be available to be assigned to a driver. And so the most common reason we build a static load in the system is because we don't want to manually enter in a load every Monday for the same customer with the same stops every week. And so if we build it in the static load, we enter it once in the database, we schedule it to run whatever days of the week that it runs, and it appears on that day available to be assigned to a driver. In our next session, we'll talk about automating the assignment through a driver rotation, but we won't get too far down that road until we need to. We'll focus today on the static loads themselves, how to create them in the system, how to schedule them to run on the certain days of the week and special days, and how to make them active or inactive, or generate a start or end date based on those loads. And so let's go ahead and move in that direction. First, over on the left-hand side, we'll see that we have a large number of static loads already in this database. There's kind of a big list on the left-hand side here. And if I wanted to make my left-sided window a little bit larger, I can do this kind of a couple ways. I can grab my static load edit form at the top, left-click on that blue header, and drag it over to the right. I'll do the same for my frequency. You don't have to do this, but I'm just going to show you how I would resize these windows. I'm going to grab the buttons window and drag that over. Actually, it's going to pause for a second, move that over, and then I'll resize my jobs tree to make it a little bigger so I can see everything that I need to see here. I have kind of a widescreen monitor with a higher resolution, so it may appear small on your screen here, but it gets everything in there. Now I have a lot of space in between here. I can simply click on this Doc Forms button just above Close Plane, and that'll move all my forms to the left margin that I've created. So now I have everything visible in a single view here. It sometimes comes in handy. Over on the left, the system has highlighted the first load, the first static load in my list or in my jobs tree, and it's a freight load, or at least it's for this customer that I have here called Truck Country, and it goes to a few different stops. And so if I left-click on it, it'll close that load and actually open it again, because it likes to always open the topmost load, at least one load, whenever it opens up the load tree. So let's go ahead and click on this. We've used this example of this customer 123DB, which is representative of an example of a mail contract environment. And so that's our customer name, 123DB, and then a series of stops that are associated with that load. So we'll start here, and we'll also look at a freight load as well. So in this example, this customer, or mail contract 123DB, is scheduled to run, it's a two-stop load or trip. It goes from the Milwaukee Post Office to the Madison Post Office. And if we look at the first pickup stop, it picks up at the Madison Post Office at 1:45. At Milwaukee Post Office at 1:45, and delivers to the Madison Post Office at 3:30. Some details of each of the stops appear on the right. Exactly similar, nearly identical to the load plane itself when we build a load in the system. There's one major difference with the static loads, and that is that you don't see a date or a load date associated with these trips. And so normally in the load plane or the route plane, you would see the customer name, and then you would see the date and then the time of the first pickup in this first line, or this header line for the load. Here we see the load number randomly generated by LoadTrek, the customer, as we expect in blue here, and then instead of the date and the time, we see just the first pickup time of 1:45 that matches the pickup there at Milwaukee. And the reason we don't see a date here is because we're in the static load plane. This load, this particular job, is going to post many times throughout the next few weeks. And so it's important to know that we won't see a date when we're looking at the static loads in the jobs tree. And it's a little more clear when we look at the first stop here, the Milwaukee Post Office. Over on the right, we see the stop location, the physical address, geocode, and phone number. All this comes in from our location information. Stop type is a pickup. It's a stage 1. That refers to how many drivers will be running it. This is the first driver's assignment, stage 1. And the arrival date, rather than be a set date of today, like February 20th, the arrival date is simply referred to as a base day, meaning it's going to arrive at the Milwaukee Post Office on the base day, on the day that we schedule it to run. and it's going to arrive there. This driver needs to be there at 1:45, and they need to leave there on the same day. They're not staying over midnight. They're leaving the Milwaukee post office a short time later at 2:10 a.m. And then there's no other information here. We don't necessarily need this information. It's all optional. And so the base day at 1:45 is the arrival, and the base day at 2:10 is the departure. That's the scheduled arrival and departure to the Milwaukee post office. What actual date that this load runs is going to be driven off of our frequency. And so if we say that this job or load runs every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, then on Tuesday, tomorrow, in our dispatch on the route plane, we're going to see a load for this customer 123DB show up with a pickup of Tuesday, 2/21 at 1:45, a departure at 2:21 at 2:10, and then likewise in Madison here, if we click on that stop, an arrival at 2:21 at 3:30, and a departure at 2/21/2012 at 3:50. And so it just takes the base day, converts it into the date that matches the run date. In this case, Tuesday tomorrow will be the 21st, and then Wednesday will be the 22nd, and Thursday will be the 23rd. And so we'll see those in our load plane and our route plane available for dispatch because of how we have this schedule. And we're going to build one here from scratch so we can see that a little more clear. But first I wanted to look at some of the ones that are here to review what information we can see in the static load plane. Take a look at maybe a freight load. We'll grab this one down here below. We see this is for the customer Hassett Air Freight. The scheduled pickup or the load start time is going to be 2:30, which corresponds to our first pickup here at this stop, R.R. Donnelly Baraboo, and then the drop off here at Hassett Air Freight. If we click on the first stop, we'll see that that's scheduled for the arrival on base day, departure on base day, and then here at Hassett Air Freight, we don't have a set arrival time or depart time, but once it becomes a route, as we know, the system will generate estimated travel time and fill in the projected Hassett Air Freight times for arrival and departure. The important thing here is that we want them to occur on the same day, base day. We don't expect that this trip is going to run into the next day. If we did, then we would schedule this arrival and departure date to be the following day. And we're going to do that as an example of how we can build the static load. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to refresh our tree, which closes any open loads on the left and brings us back to our standard list. And we're going to add a new static load. And let's go ahead and do that. The best way to do that, very similar to any other load building that we've done in the system before, is to click on Add Load. That'll change us to our Load Info tab, and we can choose our load customer. We can begin typing. I'm going to type 123DB here. We're going to use that same example we did before. As I typed, my list of all my customers in the database shows up, and I can choose a different one if I prefer. We'll start here with 123DB. Hit the tab key. Tariff level. We're going to get into tariff levels a little bit later. We touched on them in the billing plane, but we'll talk about those in an upcoming session. It's an optional field. The load type. Let's just call it a regular run if we have that in here as an example. And we do. You see all the different load types in our database from the pull down. Qualifications. We're going to skip those for the moment as well. And the ordered by, we'll say that, and then, well, let's use a different name here. John's so overused, but let's say Bill ordered this load, and then I accepted it, and I'm entering it in the system. And any comments on here, maybe a test static load. Load reference number. If we needed to include a load reference number, we can do that here. And let's say it's trip number 86 on this contract. I hit the tab key, it'll then ask me to begin entering in some stop information. And so let's make the first stop here. I don't know if we have a La Crosse post office. Let's choose that one. You see that it pulls in all my information from that location. Stop type will be P for pickup, and then I can just hit the tab key. Stage 1. And then here we're going to do base day. Let's say we're going to build this load and it's going to arrive later in the evening. So it needs to arrive at the La Crosse post office at, let's say, 2200. And they need to get out of there at 2215. And if we needed to include any bill of lading, trailer, or comments, we could. For now, we'll just tab through that field. We'll see that it's begun to create the load on the lower portion of our tree over here. So we've already got the customer and the first stop entered. You'll also notice that in the center here, we've highlighted in red the button called Add Stop. So rather than having to go back to my mouse and click on Add Stop, I can just hit the Enter key and add the next stop. So this person's going to go from the La Crosse post office, and maybe they're going to go back to Milwaukee. I know we have it in there, so let's go ahead and add that one. And this stop type is going to be a delivery, and it'll be stage 1. It's going to be the same driver, so that's where both the pickup and the delivery will be stage 1. And the arrival date, let's say that it's going to take a little over 2 hours for this driver to get there. So in this case, my arrival date will not be base day. If I'm picking up in La Crosse on the base day at 2200, I may not get to Milwaukee till after midnight. If that's the case, then my arrival date will be plus 1 day. And what we mean is plus 1 day from the base day. So if I pick up base day at 2200 or 10 o'clock at night, I may arrive in Milwaukee a bit later than that. If I tab through, you see it already changes my depart date to plus 1 day because I can't go back in time. So both I'm going to arrive and depart, in this case, 1 day later than the day that I started, or the base day. And let's say I'm going to arrive at 1:30 in the morning, and we'll depart here at 1:45. If I tab through these remaining fields, it's going to add in that second stop on my load. We look down on the left. We now have a 2-stop load or static load built in the system for this customer 123DB from the La Crosse post office to the Milwaukee post office. And that's going to be load number 207750. That's the random or the next load that's available to be created in our test database. That's the load number that we're going to assign it. So let's refresh our tree. If we do that, I currently have my tree sorted in chronological order, so that new load will show up at the 2200 mark as to when we created it. Just give it a moment to refresh here. We'll take a look at that. What we haven't done is scheduled the frequency, and that's what we're going to do next. What I like to do is build the loads, assign the stops, refresh the tree, confirm that my load looks good here, and it's going to be 207750. If I open the load by left-clicking on it, it will show me the stops underneath, and then I can assign the frequency to the load. Oops. I got a little click happy there, but let's go ahead and open that load one more time. So here's my load, the 123DB, La Crosse pickup at 2200, Milwaukee delivery at 1:30 the next day. Now, the stops will be displayed chronologically, so if I look at this, it almost looks like maybe I'm going back in time from 10 a.m. to 1:30, but if I click on the stops, I can look at them in more detail and see that this is base day, and the arrival in Milwaukee and departure from Milwaukee are plus 1 day on the right-hand side. And so now I want to set the frequency for this load. So if I say that this load runs a set number of days during the week, I can just select the days of the week that it runs, and I can also select from my holiday or special day list if it runs on any of those days as well. And so for our test purpose here, let's just say that this load runs every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and it also runs on the day after most large holidays here, or more common holidays. We have some weird ones in here, so I'll just go ahead and choose to the bigger days. So those are the days that it runs, and we'll talk about the frequency in more depth here in a moment. So if I want to save this frequency hasn't been saved yet in my database, I can simply click on select the days of the week and the holidays that it runs, click Save As, and then name this frequency. And so maybe I'll call it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and day after major holidays. If I hit Save, it will then tell me that it saved the frequency, provided I haven't goofed it in any way, but we'll see that message here in a moment. And so once that frequency is saved, I can then choose that frequency for any other static loads that I create. And so it'll tells me frequency MWF and day after major holidays saved. If I click OK, then I know it's now in my pull down, and I can theoretically assign that to other loads as well. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And so let's refresh our tree. I like to do that after all my steps have been taken and review the load from a clarity point of view. Maybe it's a double check or a triple check, if you will, and take a look at the load and make sure it looks the way I want it to. Bear with me for a moment. I have a few items, maybe probably a few more items than I should running on this PC during the meeting, but let this finish here in a moment. We'll refresh our tree. And so we'll scroll down here and we'll find that load that we've just created that begins at 2200. It goes from the La Crosse Post Office to Milwaukee Post Office, trip number 86 from a load reference point of view. And then we see that it meets the frequency that we created, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, days after major holidays, and we're all set. So the moment I create this load in the static load plane, it's now active for the postings that could occur beginning this evening, and all postings for future days occur during the evening time, usually between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Central Time. That's when most of that happens, usually between 6 and midnight for some of the larger databases to get all the postings to occur. And what we refer to when we mean posting is the setting that you have in your database that you select, or you indicate for us to select, to say, I want to always see X number of days of loads into the future. And so in our test database here, I don't know exactly where we have it set, but we can always see a set number of days ahead for dispatching purposes in our database. Now, this static load that we've created is scheduled to run Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. It's a brand new load. It's never been in the database before. So the first day that it will potentially show and be available for dispatch would be this Wednesday, the 22nd, because it runs every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And it will also show on Friday available to be dispatched or assigned to a driver in the route plane. So that's how the posting occurs. There's a few other items here in red down at the bottom. They refer to whether or not this load is active or inactive. During the creation of a static load, load inactive is unselected, meaning that as soon as you build the load, it is considered an active load unless you go ahead and select this box. If the load is inactive, then when it comes to posting this evening, this load will not show up for this Wednesday or this Friday or any days in the future until you unselect the box and make the load active again. Likewise, there's a start date and an end date, so I could build this static load in my system with the idea that this static load begins next Monday or the following Monday, and then I would just choose the start date box and then this will make this field active, and I would choose whatever day that I want this load to begin posting into my database and be available for dispatch in the route plane. Likewise, I can also select the end date box and choose an end date for when I want this load to stop posting into my daily dispatch. And so I only need to run this perhaps from next Monday through June 1st, so that I can choose next Monday as a start date and June 1st as an end date. And after selecting these two boxes, I'm going to leave those empty for now, just because it's more of an uncommon scenario to choose a start date and end date. You can use this to your heart's content here over on the right. What most of our customers do, create the load. If it's scheduled to be active, choose a start date, and then let it be active and continue to be active until I manually select it as being inactive. Any of those methods really work, but for now we'll leave this load active and have it available to be posting into our database. One more comment on frequencies here. We currently have this box on the right here that was populated with the holiday run schedule. We use the term holiday because that's most often what we use here for these special days, is what I like to call them, days on which the load will or will not run. If you create a special day or a holiday in your database, it will show in this box here, and then by selecting the box, you are saying that this load will run on this day, provided it also matches the correct day of the week. And so the way the frequency works now is that it looks at this load and says, hey, there's a trip here, 123 dB. It's scheduled to run at 2200. Do I need to post it for tomorrow, Tuesday, February 21st? And the first thing it does is say, is it scheduled to run on Tuesday? And the answer is no, because this box is not selected. And then it stops looking and says, okay, you do not have to post this load. It's very simple. It just says it doesn't run on Tuesdays. Now it does the same check tomorrow night and says, hey, I have a new load in here, 123 dB, scheduled to leave at 2200. Do I need to post it for Wednesday, February 22nd? First thing it does, it checks against the day of the week. Is it scheduled to run on Wednesdays? Yes. Okay, so right now my answer is yes. I should post it in the database, but I have to do one more check before I can fully confirm that it's scheduled to run on this particular Wednesday, February 22nd. And that is the check that's done against this list. It looks at these dates. Do any of these dates match February 22nd, 2012? If the answer is yes, it then looks at the box and says, is the box checked? And if the box is checked, it will say, okay, yes, I do need to post this load on Wednesday, and I also need to post it on February 22nd, 2012, so it meets all the criteria, and it will show up on Wednesday to be dispatched. So it's a two-step check. It first checks the day of the week, and then it checks what we call the holiday or special day list for that specific date. And if all those boxes are checked, the load will post on that date.